the state of Israel. This state of Israel has launched many wars against its neighbors, and some would argue and would say, oh no, the Arab armies came and they have started to fight Israel. They have fought in 1956 against the Egyptians with the alliance of the Britons and the French. Then they have they've committed the massacre in Khan Yunis in Gaza City. They've killed more than 250 people. And then in 1967, they have launched the war against Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. Later on, they have committed many massacres in the 70s across Europe against some Palestinians, assassinations. Later on, they have committed many massacres in Lebanon. They have committed many massacres in Sabra and Shatila. And later on, they have hardly killed the Palestinians when the first Intifada happened. And later on, the second Intifada in 2000 happened. And then we started to see how cruel the Israelis were when they were killing us, the Palestinians. They were hardly killing us, using all the weapons, disproportionate power. They were using all kind of weapons against us. Okay, and you've seen what happened in Gaza war. How many people were killed? More than 1,500, mostly children, women. And according to the UN, no schools were used by Hamas to fire rockets. Not according to me. You have all these facts, and it's you who judge, and it's you who will determine who's right and who's wrong. Thanks.
Please speech and call upon Mr. Mo.
I hope I didn't rant and rave tonight. I listened by the other side. I tried not to. But let me just, without ranting or raving, answer some of the points that came up. The Louis Theroux program was answered. I don't know, I just don't think that's a useful guide to things. The last Louis Theroux program I saw was about Paul Daniels. He came out in a pretty bad light, but I don't think that means that all magicians or all Brits are represented by Paul Daniels in it. I mean, come on, let's at least talk about the reality and the history that's going on. You just heard from the previous speaker, a classic example, by the way, of what I'm going to attribute good motives to him. I'm going to be benevolent and assume that he's speaking without any ill intent. But what you've just heard then, in that case, is a classic example of bad history from somebody who's had to live in a totalitarian society. I was in Egypt a few months back, and I saw a great example of this. When there's the 8th of October city, and there's an 8th of October road, and I said to an Egyptian friend, "What's all this 8th of October business going on?" He said, "He's a very, very educated guy. Oh, that's because of our victory over the Israelis." I went, "Your what?" "Yeah, it's our victory over the Israelis." "When was that?" I had to say, no, the Israelis beat Egypt." "Really? I didn't know that." The fact is that if you live in a society which controls what you think, you can come out with real crap. Quickly, Sri Lanka hasn't come up tonight, but I would love to know if the debating society here or anyone else is doing something about we're too critical or not critical enough of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, when it put down its terrorist problem with Tamil Tigers more than a year ago, massacred tens of thousands of people. The press were kept out. The press didn't vote about it. They just stayed away. Well, that's how some states operate. It's not how Israel operates. But you do, again, have to ask yourself, why this constant focus on what Israel does in this? The fact is that Israel, the land that Israel is on, is a too much promised land. It's been promised by too many, I believe, fake deities, too many people through fake religious books. And the fact is, if you read the history of that land, it's a terrible, terrible thing. Too many people think that God tells them to settle there. And so there's a God problem, a God congestion problem in the area. I think the best way this is sorted out is to take God out of it, take out divine claims, because they're all counter to each other. We've heard a lot about history, or a bit of it anyway. And we can always discuss history. But let's just look for a second about the future. The future, as I see it, will be, as I've said repeatedly, the Palestinian state will be created, and I hope it is. And I hope that it has international support. But it can, I repeat, only be created if it recognizes that an Israeli state with a Jewish identity also exists alongside it. That remains now, as it has been for years, the biggest stumbling block. And one quick thing. Thank you. the reference that has been made repeatedly to the international law. I mean, now I don't know. I just don't like this view of history and the view of the future. That instead of armies and so on, we'll just parade international lawyers to sort out all problems. I mean, it works up to a point, but there are also things that are extra-legal problems that lawyers can't deal with. There are problems when the international people's security is threatened, when lawyers aren't the answer, and the international community, very quickly, and the UN is the reason for Israel to feel very concerned. Because since 1975, its policy has been anti the existence of the state. That is a problem, and that is one of the things that's going to stop.
Thank you so much, Mr. I'd like to call upon Mr. Mark MacDonald, please. Thank you.
You know, as an international lawyer, I think that I can solve all the world's problems. Of course I can, and look at international law. I would slightly disagree with my comrade on the left here and say that I think there are many people within Israel who do want peace. And I think we have to separate the Israeli government from the people of Israel. I've talked about the unusual and quite problematic voting system within Israel, but it produces a government that's very polarised. When we talk about being polarised, just as a side issue here, I've debated this issue a few times, predominantly and mainly against the Israeli embassy, and they've always been very cheerful, albeit a very obviously depressing and sometimes quite emotive subject, but we've always been able to come away shaking hands. The reason why is because we haven't tried to be too polarised with the issue. That's what I've tried to do in a way, is try not to be so polarised on the issue, because being polarised solves nothing. Being in one camp or the other doesn't. And so what the Israeli embassy, when I've debated them, has recognised on a number of occasions, is that Israel has got it wrong. Has got it wrong on a number of occasions. What I've heard on my left-hand side is an almost denial of anything bad about Israel. And that's a shame, because when you polarise yourself like that, and there's a tendency then for the other one to react, is that what you get is two very emotive discussions, really not much constructive discussion. So I've only got a couple of minutes to try and have a constructive discussion on the issue of the Middle East process, which has lasted 60 years. Bear with me. Two-state solution, the days of the two-state solution is running out. We're in the last dying seconds of it. The only way that we can force, and a one-state solution may never happen, because I can't imagine either side agreeing to it happening. The only solution is a two-state solution. But we have to do something about it, and we have to do something now. And the way to do it is to try and be constructive, and try and be fair, and raise arguments where arguments need to be raised, and be critical when it needs to be critical. Don't try and be totally 100% pro-Israeli. Don't try and be 100% pro-Palestine. It achieves nothing. There are serious problems going on in Gaza. We've got to raise that issue. We've also got to talk about Hamas. Now, it's hard for Hamas to turn around on the one hand and see that its brothers and its sisters are being killed by Israeli jets, but on the other hand, we're told that you've got to recognise us. I can see that, but they've got to recognise the state of Israel. But it should not be a precursor. It should not be a precursor to discussions. We have to talk today.
Mr. MacDonald, you've gone over your time. That's okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to call upon Mr. Sam Westbrook.
heard a lot from both sides. I would like to reiterate that I believe the opposition has presented a motion and conjecture, and we have given you facts and rational observations. I stand by that. The extraordinary idea that the Israeli government is somehow separate from the Israeli people is very quickly to refute. The Israeli government is the Israeli people. It's a democratic country. That's how it works. For order that peace, in order to resolve the situation, that must exist on the other side. Hamas is not the representative of the Palestinian people. They are not democratically elected. They are not a democratic government. They cannot be the partner to peace. We must look at the hypocrisies, the double standards, the demonisation, the dehumanisation, the delegitimization of Israel when it comes to this question, are we too critical? We are not criticising, we are dehumanising, we are delegitimizing. Whether it is pro-peace activists being pissing through the cheek, or whether it is a desire to negotiate with Hamas, a country which wants to annihilate the Jews. I don't think this is rational observation. In order to properly speak, we have to be for peace. And I don't believe what we're hearing out of the other side, and what we're hearing out of the entire anti-Israeli movement, is anything pro-peace. It is purely anti-Israeli, as I've said at the beginning. Israel apartheid week. Mr. Murray mentioned Khalid Sameh-Habeeb earlier, a Palestinian journalist who was unable to write in the West Bank because it's a totalitarian regime. It always has been for the last 40 years. He now writes for the Jerusalem Post because even as a Palestinian, he is able to put his point across. When he has come to both America and the UK and seen this Israel apartheid week that he's so obsessed about over here and has enjoyed so much, he has said, as a Palestinian, this sickens me. Why are you not teaching my people democracy? Why are you not helping to liberty? And why are you not ending the corruption which leads to bad government, which leads to totalitarian government, which gives no chance for peace? And so I would ask you to go away with this thought. By all means, read as much literature as you want. I'd argue to give an objective approach and read as much of each side as you can. And I do believe that the rationality of a pro-Israeli, again, a pro-peace sentiment will bring you in our favour. But just go away with this. If there is the slightest chance that by joining in with this demonisation of Israel, whether it's through the media, through your Israel apartheid weeks, or through whatever medium, if there is the slightest chance that you are helping prolong the violent hatred, the rhetoric that determines people will be killed for the foreseeable future, if you are helping to prolong that, you are part of the problem and not part of the solution. Just think about that. Thank you.
Okay, we're now opening the discussion to the floor. So, gentlemen over there, if you have any comments or questions.
Can I have your name? Sorry, I forgot your name. The gentleman in red and pink.
Mr. Murray.
Mr. Murray. Excellent. I must say, I quite admire your ability to recall facts about the lives of the people in Gaza. I've got a newspaper in front of me, and it's dated 16th January 2011. It's a publication from the UN. It states that 50% of all the people in Gaza are actually unemployed. 4 out of 5 people rely on the food aids. 75% of people lack the basic necessity of food. And 95% of all the businesses that were opened by the people in Gaza are actually closed by the Israeli government. Now, this is a UN fact. Now, I'm talking about facts. It was actually a bit... The question is that I wonder where you actually get your facts, because what you say and what I read here does not make sense.
Where do you get your facts?
Very, very good.
I get them where I think you and I urge you to get them, which is from a number of sources. First of all, read as much history as you can. Don't read biased one-sided accounts of history from any side. From any
no, ask, where did you get them from?
Answer. The Sun. First of all, I get them from reading a lot of history. Secondly, from reading a lot of current affairs. And thirdly, by travelling a lot and by speaking with a lot of people as a journalist. Now look, the thing you've just read from, is that the Palestine
It doesn't matter where it's from. The figures is from UN.
It's an interesting source. Is it the Palestine
Figures are from
Is it the Palestine Telegraph?
It doesn't matter where it's from. It could be from my head. The
Can you
figures
just tell
are
me, is it
from
the
UN.
Palestine Telegraph?
Now tell me. Tell me.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the next question. Okay.
But if it's the Palestine Telegraph, this is interesting.
We are not
If the gentleman doesn't want to tell you what his source is,
in which case I will assume that it is the source which he doesn't want to tell you all about.
okay, we're going to move on to the
I'll say and find out about it.
Answer the question. Please go.
It's regarding what Dr. Murray started with about, you quoted Ahmadinejad and about the annihilation of Israel. Ahmadinejad talks about the annihilation of Israel, whereas would you not think that the actual policies of Israel over the last number of decades have actually been targeted at annihilating the Palestinian community? So, for example, settlement expansion, land grab, the siege on Gaza, the checkpoints which prevent people from getting jobs, freedom of movement, restricting education, the Palestinian refugee situation, which Sameh mentioned. Is that not actual annihilation? And yet, I've heard you a number of times quote Ahmadinejad and talk about Iran and thinking about Hamas, yet you seem to have an allergy to actual facts on the ground.
I can
How tie into that? But the other thing that you mentioned in your opening statements, both of these are very ironic points because you talked about propaganda.
Okay, can we let him answer them one at a time?
Well, you can do them both at once.
No, because there are lots of people who want to ask questions. We're not going to have enough
It's a very
time.
brief point
So
about
can you please, Mr. Moe, please.
It's about propaganda. Just a quick point on propaganda.
Okay, no, sorry, we can't let that go. We're just wasting time for everyone else. I'm really sorry. We're not going to do things based on that. We're going to stick and maintain to a certain order. What you are doing is disrespectful to all the other students who want to hear the questions. You're wasting everyone's time. Please, Mr. Moe.
Thank you. I hope we can speak afterwards and I'll answer the second part then, in private or whatever. The question on Iran, it's a straightforward one. If the Iranian, as I say, President, Supreme Leader and others say they want to annihilate the state of Israel...
They never said that, Douglas.
Okay,
they never said
please,
basically
let the speaker finish. It's not going to be very disrespectful.
There's always someone who pretends they don't say what comes out of their mouths. Wiped from the face of time, whatever your particular transliteration you want to
you have sufficient knowledge of English. I mean, you're an English speaker, you can understand.
Your fellow students who want to listen to this answer.
Is the following. Is that whilst pursuing nuclear weaponry, that is certainly something which Israel should be concerned about. Secondly, on the issue, no, I don't think there's anything like an annihilation. Look, it's referred already that Israel is a nuclear state, okay? Mordechai Vanunu, the whistleblower, went to prison for revealing this many decades ago, as this country imprisons people who release our secrets and our intelligence information. Now look, let's just be real about this. If Israel wanted to annihilate the Palestinian people, it could, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's simply a fact on the ground. Go to the West Bank, go to Israel, speak to Palestinians in Israel. Is it annihilating them? Or is it giving them all the rights of every other citizen?
What's the Jewish oath of loyalty? What is the Jewish oath of loyalty then?
This is
How
a
is that
fantasy concept. That Israel is engaged in annihilation. And by the way, it is said for a particular reason. A very particular reason. I have to highlight this very quickly. It is always said because the desire of people in Europe and elsewhere at the moment seems to be lending towards the idea that now the Jews are doing it. Now the Jews are doing genocide. It's such an attractive thing for Europeans to argue. You see, even the Jews can do genocide. No, this is a fantasy.
Okay, can we have a response from...
Let me quickly jump on the point that I've been hearing for long now, which is whether Hamas recognize Israel or not. There has to be a question whether Israel recognize the Palestinians or not. Quickly, I'll go back into history and I'll see. And I'll ask Mr. Murray, have Israel recognized us?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Of course no. Israel has recognized the PLO as a representative of the Palestinians, but they've never recognized Palestine or Palestinians as a nation or a state. They never, and they will never do it.
Okay, thank you. I've got another question. Okay, how about the gentleman over there in the corner?
There's a question to that side. The other side takes Hamas to be an obstacle to any diplomatic process of progress in the region. This side takes that as a premise of the argument. Is that something that you share? And if so, what are the possible solutions to Hamas's ideological objections what goes forward on
I'll try and answer that. I think again, we keep on coming back to the same answer. Sometimes it is very complex. Of course it's very complex. You can't just deal with it in black and white. You know, it is a situation where Hamas are being identified, targeted, and in many cases assassinated. When you're killing the people of Hamas, it is very difficult for them to sit at the table with you and to start talking peace. So it has to start with let's stop dropping bombs on families. Let's stop targeting and extrajudicial murders in foreign countries. That's where it has to start. Starts there, and then we start taking them to the table. And yes, like we talked to the IRA, and there are food problems with that and anything I know, but like we start talking to the IRA, we have to start sitting down at the table and start talking to Hamas.
Sorry, just one regarding this question.
Okay, very quickly.
I don't want to be a spokesman for Hamas or defend Hamas views, but having followed the politics, I could clearly tell you since Hamas and it's coming to power, there has to be some strategic change in its policy. They have started to say that we might accept two-state solution based on the 1967 borders, which is a turning point in Hamas charter. Okay, I guess this has to be taken further if the Israelis accept to speak with Hamas, but they will never accept.
Okay, a question from the gentleman at the back there in the striped shirt.
I'm not belonging to any particular religious affiliation myself. I did visit Israel recently. It was just one of those places that have always interested me very deep in culture and religion. Just an observation, I was staying in Tel Aviv, and a part of, in Tel Aviv you have Jaffa as it's called in Hebrew. And what I found quite interesting was the Arabs living there tend to have a very good life. I saw most of them driving around in BMWs and nice cars. We ate in a restaurant run by Arabs that were predominantly served by Jewish customers living. So I don't think like this hostility, like I think to an extent you're making it sound almost a little bit exaggerated in concern to contemporary.
Okay, can we have someone from this side and then someone from this side answer?
I don't know if this works, but I think we get a very sterile approach to Israel and Palestine when you go to Tel Aviv. I think it's a very different world from actually what's going on in Nablus and Hebron and Ramallah and Bethlehem and East Jerusalem. I think in Tel Aviv it's almost like an oasis surrounded by a war zone. And I'm sure you went outside of Tel Aviv, and I'm sure you probably went over to Ramallah or Nablus or went into Hebron and sat in cafes there. But I think if you did, you would have seen a very different world.
Yeah, of course. Tel Aviv is a central place with not just Jews and Arabs and Christians living happily side by side, but also one of the only places in the Middle East where the gay community can thrive. Free from persecution. To then state that Nablus and Hebron are not in Israel proper, they're in what's called disputed territories, disputed territories, and they're a war zone. The question we must ask is where does the moral competency lie? So it's a war zone, it's different from Israel proper. And the model that we hope for the Palestinian state is that of Israel, is that of Tel Aviv, where Jews and Arabs can live happily side by side.
Okay, now another question. Okay, gentleman there.
Mr. Murray, you said Israel, we call them military occupiers, have a democracy. Well, this democracy has come with a cost. 60 years of occupation and the cost of my grandfathers in South Lebanon, and this democracy has brought these, just to mention a few, and I have the source for you if you are really interested into facts, by United Nations and a few organizations in the United States, so I'll bring it to you down. One of them is that more than 1.1 million people, which is 75% of Gaza population, lack food according to the United Nations. And 10% of Gaza water now meets the international standards for consumption. And also Israel allows entry for only 2.2 million liters each week of fuel, half of the minimum level required by the civilian in Gaza. Now, how would you call that a democratic state? I don't call them. I call them military occupiers.
Okay, good. Let me ask
You were laughing at the data. I have the data for you here.
Firstly, I think even the UN's own data, which you can look back at like later, shows that living standards in Gaza are higher than in many other parts of the region. Secondly, let's just get back to the facts. Why is it that there are checkpoints when you do get out of Gaza? Why is it that Israel is sending in truck after truck of food, and why isn't there free flow? Because, just to tread back over it again, every time there is a free flow from Gaza into Israel, Israel gets suicide bombers. Ooh. So if there were no suicide bombers coming in, then the aid and so on could be better. It would be trade, not aid. And then secondly, a very, very important point. The gentleman who just spoke said 60 years of occupation. Is this, we ask ourselves what I think most of us on the panel want, which is a carving out of a Palestinian state within this? No. 60 years of occupation. You mean the whole of Israel is an occupation? Do you not?
The whole of Palestine.
Yeah. Do you not think that?
The whole of Palestine is an occupation.
Yeah. You believe, in other words, there is no Jewish state on the rise.
No, Jews can live in Palestine, but Israel, they invaded Palestine. That's what they did.
Illegal.
And South
We're going to have a response to that. And then we're going to have a debate on end. So there won't be any more questions. Sorry. Let's go to this bit.
There was a quick, like a flagrant mistake made again by Mr. Murray, and I'm very happy to keep track of his mistakes. He only claims to utter lies when he said that about the checkpoints in Gaza because of the suicide attacks since Israel imposed the siege in Gaza 2006 till now. There was no suicide attacks going from Gaza into Israel. Tell us names, numbers, statistics, please. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to have to finish there. I'm very sorry. Thank you ever so much to all my guest speakers.